Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I trust we are all still in the morning. All the delegates are from Africa, so whether it's early in the morning or a little bit later in the morning, good morning and welcome. And thank you for joining us today for this webinar, SQM, Monitoring Your Firm's System of Quality Management. Right, so let's maybe just start by who am I, and then we will get into the content itself. My name is Joanna Schreder. I am the content owner for SQM. You might also have seen me in other webinars, but for today, my role is that I provide a lot of the content for SQM, and I also jot down a lot of wishes for what we still want in the product. So I almost want to start by already inviting you to say if there are any things that you have thought about or that you want us to add to the product to make it easier for you. And this is now really almost opening this net very, very widely. But if there are things that can make it easier for you, please let us know. I think the easiest is probably just to jot it down in the questions today. I've got Verdine, who is joining us on the question side. She is monitoring the questions. If there are urgent questions, she will raise them to me. And she will then also just note those for us, and I can also just generate a report afterwards. So please, if there are anything that you have come across, you're welcome to let us know. All right, so that's first of all just myself, Joanna Schreder. If you may be thinking, wondering, where am I in the world? I'm based in Cape Town, and it's a lovely sunny spring day, which is actually kind of good for us. Normally, it is still raining quite a bit. All right. But for today we are really focusing on monitoring your firm's system of quality management. You might have seen the slide that's on the screen in different formats. Essentially, what we have here is almost like a life cycle of SQM. And specifically then saying, how do things work? And you will note that there is basically a circle. So continuously we are going through this process. And that is really because primarily we are in a system of continuous improvement, which means we are always trying to show that we are improving. Whenever we find an issue, we will always go and try and correct it, try and improve it. If we have a policy that we believe there is something we can do to make it even better, we will go and improve that. And of course, the way to improve that is to go and then change your system so that it can actually be in another way. All right, what we are working on today, though, is we are actually going to then focus on the monitoring part. So in terms of the focus for today, we are going to look at where does the monitoring fit into this whole life circle, and what do I do, or what would I have seen happen before that, and what happens after that. And of course, we're going to look at the software itself to say, how do I actually go about doing it? All right, I thought of starting the morning off by simply just first looking at what the theory says. What are we required to do? And then after that, we are going to go to the software and see what happens. How does that work? All right, so the purpose of monitoring. First of all, ISQM 1 actually requires monitoring. Now, yes, ISQ C1, the old quality control standard, also required monitoring, but it didn't have as much of an emphasis in there. And I almost want to say tongue in cheek, we actually have more requirements now, or at least it is a lot more explicit now, and we actually cannot get away from that anymore. All right, so the purpose then of the monitoring is that we need to ensure that the firm's system of quality management complies with ISQM 1. The objective of ISQM 1, just to maybe remind ourselves, is to say that we want to have a system that is such that it ensures that the culture in the firm is a good culture that drives quality, and that the standards, or rather that the personnel comply with the standards and requirements, and then ultimately that the quality is good such that the reports issued by the firm are appropriate. So the engagement quality is sufficient so that the reports that we issue at the end of the day are the correct reports. All right, so in monitoring, we want to make sure that our firm actually, our system complies. How do we do that? We make sure that our system was designed meeting the requirements, it is implemented and operating the way that we decided, the way that we thought of, intended to. I cannot help but already think about our clients. If you are performing an audit or even an internal audit, when we consider the client's controls, a lot of people will say we first look at D&I before we go and test for operating effectiveness. And this is basically what we are doing for the system of quality management. We are checking that the client has actually designed and implemented their controls appropriately. Only this time, it's basically our firm, that's the client. And we are also checking that those controls that we have determined that are appropriately designed and implemented are also operating the way that the client designed them. So it's not just a bunch of policies lying somewhere, but it's actually part of what we are living and breathing in the firm. All right. The strange thing about this is probably that very often it will be someone within our firm and not necessarily an independent, objective person that's performing the work of the monitoring. So this is, of course, supposed to be done to take timely remediation. So if you do come across a deficiency or a problem in the system, in the way the system is operating, in the way the staff is applying a policy, then you can correct it, you can change it, you can improve it, so that we can hopefully not lose too much time in terms of deficiencies and fixing those deficiencies. And let's also hope, obviously, not signing incorrect audit opinions or reports at the end of the day. All right, so the whole process is really trying to help us to be proactive, to identify those items as soon as possible, and to then also fix them as soon as possible in the system and apply those fixes, those improvements going forward. All right, who uses the monitoring information? This is almost something we could get to at the end to say, okay, once I've done the monitoring, what's going to happen with it? So what now? What now? So I thought of us rather thinking about it now already and saying, why are we doing this? Who's going to want to have this information? Now, first of all, many of you on the call today will already know that the person with ultimate responsibility, probably your CEO or the managing partner in your firm, has to perform an evaluation of your firm's system of quality management at least once a year. And if you implemented around the end of December a few years ago, you will know that come this December, within 12 months of your previous evaluation, you need to perform an evaluation. So your managing partner, CEO, the ultimate responsible party or parties in your firm need information on which to base their evaluation. And what they will basically use is they'll look at the responses, or rather the results from the monitoring, and the findings that were identified, the deficiencies that were identified, and what we did with those deficiencies, and how we hopefully then also improved the firm's system through additional risks, policies, procedures, etc. And then say, right, good, maybe everything wasn't perfect in the year, but we fixed those things. And then with all of that information, what we found in the monitoring, how we fixed it, and where we are today, can I now conclude that the firm's system of quality management is in fact achieving SQM 1 or not yet? All right, so the firm's leadership definitely uses it. Then also other individuals that are assigned requirements or responsibilities within the system of quality management. Now, that does not mean the person that has to go and design the system. This means almost everyone. You can see on the slide, I've even included engagement quality reviewers who have to review engagements and make sure that we are complying and that we are not missing any big risks, judgmental mistakes, or anything, professional judgments that we get wrong in our engagements. So even those people would need to know about what was found in the monitoring activities so that they can hopefully go and see that those same findings, or if it is deficiencies, that they don't reoccur in the engagements. All right, and then also the engagement partners that are responsible for managing and achieving the engagement quality on each engagement, they also need to know what to look out for. And so you can almost go on to include everyone in the firm. The engagement teams need to know what went wrong and how were they fixed, what must they do differently. There's a new template for this, or our policy has changed. Make sure that they know about it so that they can, of course, comply and apply the changes. All right, so almost everybody needs to know about this. You can also include clients who may want to know about the results of monitoring on the engagements and so forth. But you can see that there's a lot of individuals and parties that are very interested in what the results show. Good. So basically, the system has to be reviewed as a whole. I've mentioned already that we're basically considering this almost like a control testing. So we start by looking at how was this system of quality management designed and how is it operating. And you can see the detail that I've got on the slide. You've got to actually go and check, has the system included every one of these required objectives from SQM 1? Of course, if you applied all the ones in SQM, you would have all of them. But you really have to go through all of those steps in there to make sure that they are all covered and that your system of quality management is in fact compliant. Then we go and we look at the implementation and the operation, and that's where a lot of the monitoring activities are going to take place. And it's to say, this was the policy, did you do it? This was the procedure, did you do it? This is the form, the task that had to be completed, did you complete it? Did you complete it correctly? All right, and so the question really is, do these responses address the risks in terms of design, never mind even the did you do it part? And then lastly, maybe just the thought also is to say that we also need to check that the monitoring is done correctly and that the remediation process worked the way it was intended. In other words, when we did monitoring last year, we found certain deficiencies. The team went back and did root cause analysis and told us how they were going to remediate it. If I come back this year again, or in 2 months' time, to come and check whether those remediation activities were actually done and implemented, that's what I come and do. I come and say, right, we found those problems, we found the findings, we found the deficiencies. This is how you said you were going to fix it. Have you fixed them? All right. Have you updated your policies? Have you implemented the new thing that you were going to do? If it was training that you had to do additional training, whatever the thing is, improve the budgets, whatever it is. Have you in fact done those? So in part of the monitoring is also to go and check that you had done what you said you were going to do to improve or to basically address the deficiencies. I want to say basically work away or get rid of the deficiencies in your system. But of course, with that, a different way to say it is to improve on those deficiencies. You also need to consider whether network requirements require specific monitoring, and also you need to monitor whether how you are using your network services, whether those services are also providing what you need to. And then lastly, we also said that you also need to consider management's evaluation and whether they've actually done the evaluation in terms of SQM1, because that covers it all. We've started with the design. In part of the design is also the firm's risk assessment, all those things. And we can do everything, but if we miss that last step to say management has to do the evaluation, or the client, the person ultimately responsible, the managing partner, perhaps the CEO, has to do the evaluation, and we miss that, or he does it late, well, then we missed a requirement of SQM1. So you're basically monitoring everything. All right, it is quite extensive. All right, the firm will tailor the monitoring activities according to that firm. And there's a whole long list of things to consider, where the assessments and the reasons for assessments given in quality risks. So, for example, you might have assessed a quality risk and then identified that this risk is especially relevant to listed audits or audits of publicly traded companies or public interest entities or audits in a specific industry, or maybe not audits, maybe something else. That reason will give you an indication as to how you must monitor it, or when you will monitor it, or how many items to monitor, or how to select it, etc. So all of those things. The design of responses will tell you how you're going to monitor it, because if the response is done weekly, you can actually go and monitor it more often than when the response is only done once a year. All right. Also looking at the firm's risk assessment process, all those processes, you can only monitor what is actually there. Right. Changes in the system. If there weren't any changes in the system, you are probably going to test the actual design in a little bit less detail. Yes, you will still need to check that there wasn't something that required a change. But if there weren't any changes, you don't need to test the design and implementation of any new items. Right. Previous monitoring activities, were they mostly not done well, done well? What did you find there? Do you need to go and select more of those items? And then any other relevant information. Let's say, for example, let's hope it doesn't happen, but as an example, if an engagement partner gets a complaint to say that he didn't comply with certain requirements, and you went through your investigation and found that was in fact the case, well, what's going to happen? We're going to say, well, we need to go and check if this partner actually did anything else wrong, and we might go and select more of his engagements, things like that, as part of our monitoring. All right. When and how often do we monitor? Now, the standard says we have to monitor on an ongoing process and on a periodic process. So ongoing monitoring activities are those routine activities that happen all the time. If I can use a silly example, probably not a quality management example, but when we submit our timesheets, someone reviews those timesheets, someone checks that we are meeting budget, things like that. Those are routine activities and could possibly even be considered ongoing activities. If that is part of your monitoring for quality management, likely not. If we think about forms that are completed in SQM, so tasks that are completed. The fact that a person has to regularly monitor that those items are done on time, that the gifts that were completed in the gift register are in fact approved and could have been received. Or we monitor lockdown, archiving of files, the fact that files need to be archived after at least 60 days, not longer than that. In fact, I heard of a regulator globally that actually reduced that to 14 days the other day. Okay, so thankfully it's not in Africa, but there are some regulators that have different dates. So if you have a certain lockdown date that you need to archive your files within a certain day, and you probably continuously monitoring that, and that will probably then be your ongoing monitoring that you've built into your processes to check every so often. Periodic monitoring is to say, every 3 months, we are going to check the following things. Once a year, we are going to select a few engagement files and do this or that or the other thing. Those are periodic monitoring activities. Right, so we have a combination of the two types. Then the standard says we have to also include completed engagement files. I've already mentioned or alluded to them once or twice. So remember we said the system of quality management has those policies and procedures, those items in the system that we need to check that they are actually being done. Now, a lot of them will say the firm has a policy to do X or Y or Z. So we can go from a firm level and go and select those monitoring activities that will monitor that those items are done at a firm level. But the standard says it's all fine and well to have that at a firm level, but you also need to come and check that it has in fact been completed in the engagement as well. So my example of a gift register earlier, or maybe even the declaration of independence, any of those types of examples, yes, we will have the register with the firm that needs to be completed, but we will also expect documentation thereof on the engagement file. We will have training that needs to be attended on the financial reporting framework or changes to the auditing standards, any of those items. And at the same time, those obviously need to be demonstrated in the engagement file. So we want to see that the person knows how to audit, let's say, accounting estimates. So the fact that they attended the training, that's a firm level matter. But when they are auditing estimates, we want to see that they've done that appropriately. When the firm has policies to say there needs to be an engagement quality reviewer for the following engagements, yes, that's done and determined at a firm level. And we can go check that those were allocated, but then we need to go check the engagement file to see, did the engagement quality reviewer actually review that? Right, did they review it? Is there evidence of their involvement throughout the audit, etc., etc.? So that's why we must also review engagements, which I'm sure a vast majority of you will already have almost expected, even if the standard didn't. The standard requires that. Right, what can we do from the completed engagement? I think the first thing that's probably almost obvious is to say it can show us that those policies and procedures were also implemented in the engagement. But it can also tell us where maybe the application or the implementation, the operation of the policies can actually be improved. Where are the teams struggling with things? How are they maybe doing it differently to what the policy is? Maybe our policy wasn't properly worded and they kind of misinterpreted it. Do we need to strengthen the policy to match with what they're doing, or do we need to actually change the policy so that they can also change their actions? And then when we see positive outcomes, of course, we can learn from those and also just update or apply that across the board. Right, further in terms of inspection engagement files, we basically get to a point where you can choose which files. You can imagine you're not going to look at every single file. So how do we choose which engagements? We'll look at, for example, audits that are more frequent than other engagements. We will probably select audits more frequently than other engagements because that's where the higher risk is, right? Audits of public interest entities will maybe be selected more often than audits of small, teeny, tiny engagements that don't carry as much risk. We might select different offices. If we have multiple offices, we might select different engagement partners and basically rotate them on a cyclical basis. And there we go, and we decide on different ways to go and determine that. So again, for that partner or all the partners, how long has it been since each of them have been inspected? What engagement does that partner do? This partner doesn't do any audit, so we will maybe do inspections on his engagements less often than the partner that only audits public interest entities. He'll probably get an inspection every year. Previous results from previous inspections, how experienced this partner is. If it's the first year that he's the partner, I can bet you he's going to get a review of his file. The complexity of the firm, the size of the firm, how many partners there are. If it's a small firm, you can probably just as well review a file for each of the 2 partners every year. So that really is a combination then of the engagements, the partners, in terms of determining that, I almost want to say, inspection rotation plan to get to that cyclical basis. All right, some more information on the monitoring is specifically also monitoring the monitoring process. Okay, this is not a circular reference like I'm running around in circles all the time, but what is important is that we are monitoring the activities in the system of quality management, and a part of that is the fact that monitoring has to take place. And you can see a few of those considerations. I've already also said we need to monitor that what had to happen has happened. For example, did we select engagements to actually monitor? Secondly, did we select those engagements in terms of the rotation plan, the cyclical rotation schedule for selecting engagement partners? Did we select, if let's say we say we're going to monitor all the publicly listed entities, did we in fact cover all of those in our inspection? Right, so that's monitoring the monitoring process. Then the remediation process also needs to be monitored. Again, I have alluded to that before, where we said we are going to go and check that the remediation actions or the remedial actions from before are in fact implemented and have hopefully also resulted in positive outcomes. Because if those remediation actions were implemented and we still have the same outcomes, maybe we didn't actually find the root causes. Maybe we need to go and find the real root cause, if I can call it that, and then go and address that real root cause. Because it's almost like saying I'm just addressing a symptom all the time. If there is a deeper reason why something is going wrong, we need to go and address that reason, and then we'll hopefully see the symptoms either improving or changing drastically. Now, the next question, who's going to perform the monitoring? Now, the firms also need policies and procedures to address specifically as to the fact that the people that perform the monitoring have the necessary competence and capabilities. You cannot just have a junior trainee that doesn't have any audit work to do this week. So, oh, you know what, go and pull that file quickly and just do a few inspections and check a few things and come back to us with the monitoring results. No, that's not monitoring. So you've got to have a person with the necessary experience, sufficient time, sufficient capabilities, know what to look for, why are they looking for it, etc. And then also the objectivity of the person performing the monitoring. Now, in terms of objectivity, what is important for me to mention here is to say that it can be someone from within your own firm. But what is specifically stipulated is that the person that reviews an inspection file, so the monitoring performed on a specific engagement file, that may not be done by a person that was part of the engagement team, so the manager or the partner or anyone in that team, and also, of course, not be the engagement quality reviewer of that engagement. So that is maybe a practical example of objectivity of the person performing the monitoring. All right, you may have someone external to the firm, like a service provider, performing the engagement level or the firm level review. You don't have to have someone in the firm. And at the same time, if we think about the objectivity, there's nothing that says you must have someone from outside the firm. You may not have someone in the firm, as long as you can still ensure that it's not someone from the engagement team and that the person has the necessary capabilities, time, and competence. All right. If I then move on to just the principle or the way in which we go and do the inspection, once we've got the list of items we need to check for, we will perform those monitoring activities, and we're going to go to the system, to SQM quite soon to go and see how that happens. But the theory then basically says when we're performing the monitoring activities, we will go and raise, let's say, queries. All right. The standard refers to them as findings. So I see this and this had to be done. It wasn't done, or one of them wasn't done, and I will raise a finding or a query. Then through that, we identify the list of findings. In the findings or the queries, the person responsible will respond and say, this is what happened, or this is why it happened, or this is how we reasoned, this is why we didn't select that file, or this is why the document wasn't completed, whatever the case is. The person performing the monitoring then has to come and decide if that finding is such that it actually qualifies, if I can put it that way, to be a deficiency. Okay, so you've got to almost filter from the findings, you've got to filter and see which are the deficiencies. Now, the deficiencies are then items that if they are absent or they weren't appropriately applied or they weren't designed, maybe you've got a policy, but the policy wasn't properly designed or just not implemented. If any of those were not done, so there's a finding and they weren't done, the question is, how bad is this really? Is it such that it's actually not going to meet the objective of ISQM 1? An ultimate objective of ISQM 1 is we must make sure that we sign appropriate engagement reports, okay, or assurance reports. So if we get to the point of saying, actually, this is a deficiency, it's a weakness in the system of quality management, it's a deficiency, it's bad enough that it's actually going to influence the compliance with ISQM 1, then it becomes a deficiency. Otherwise, it's just a finding. Something didn't happen, whatever the case is. And sometimes that finding can actually be, almost want to say, be reasoned away. Right, but the record will stay there so that we can still see someone did query it. If anybody needs to check later on and say, but hang on, what's happening here? We can still see this was picked up and it was queried. But we can see it's not a deficiency because it's not so bad. It's not such, it's not indicating that there is a weakness in the system of quality management that will lead to us not meeting the objective of ISQM 1. When we do, however, find that this is indicating a weakness, it is a deficiency. The standard then says, now, how bad is it? Okay, we've said it's bad, how bad? So then we have to evaluate the severity of this deficiency. So how bad is it? And the pervasiveness, is it across the board for all engagements, for everything, affecting the whole system, or is it just in a specific area? And in other words, how severe and how pervasive is the impact on your firm's system of quality management and therefore compliance with ISQM 1? Because that will then determine how much of a problem this is, how far you, I was going to say how far you have to go look for the root cause, but that's probably not entirely technically correct. But I would expect that your remedial action, the way that you're going to go fix this, is going to be more effort, probably more actions, better or stronger changes to your system, etc., whatever the cases may be, to fix them than a deficiency that is not as severe or it's not as pervasive in your compliance with ISQM 1. All right. So that being that, then, once we've then got these deficiencies, I've already now alluded to root causes. So the previous standard said, well, we need to fix things. And there was a lot of requirements. So you kind of just had to go, okay, this is wrong. This is what must have been happening. Let me do that. But now the standard goes and says, why did this go wrong? Go find the root cause. And basically, there's a few models in which to determine the root causes. In fact, the root cause analysis is a whole, I just want to say, like a science. There are courses about it. And people also do root causes, not just in audits and in audit firms, but in manufacturing processes and a variety of places. You can actually perform root cause analysis. If you plan to run the comrades next year, and you don't get to finish it, okay, you're going to go back and say, why did I not finish the comrades? Well, I never even bought my flight ticket to get there, so how could I have even run? Okay, I actually buy my flight ticket, so I was there, but I forgot my tackies at home. Or everything happened, I was running, but I just couldn't finish, I was too tired. Why was I too tired? So in any of those cases, why did you not finish? Well, there's a reason, but why did you not finish? And you basically flesh that out until you get to the point of saying, well, when it was winter or when it was weekend and I was supposed to go for a long run, I preferred not to. I chose to sleep in or go to the beach or do this or do that or whatever it is. That is Probably not even the root cause. You can even go further to say, well, why did you choose not to go for a run? So that's the thing. So different methodologies of determining root causes. One of the favorites is your 5 whys. So oftentimes by the time you get to the 5th why did you not get up? Why did you prefer to sleep in? Okay, you were tired. Why were you tired? All of those things. Then you get to the real reason, the root cause of why did you not run the comrades, or why did you not meet the objective? Why did the policy not get implemented, or why is the policy not properly designed in the first place? Right, there are other ways also. There's a fish, something about a fish. Also, there are a few different ways in which you can perform root cause analyses. So you need to then determine what is the real reason, and be honest when you do this. Everything cannot be fixed with training. You know, I can attend all the training in the world and still not know how to actually go and do something, or still get it wrong. Okay, so just be honest about a variety of things that are often systemically wrong in our firm and that we need to fix in different ways than just training. Like if my staff have too little time on the engagement, sending them on training that takes away time from them in client-facing scenarios is actually going to put more pressure on them rather than relieve pressure on them by saying, you know what, I'm going to give you an extra 3 or 4 hours to do this work. Or next year I need to recruit more, I don't know, audit seniors, audit managers, or whatever the case is, to actually give you more time to do the work properly so that you're not as rushed and under so much pressure, if that is the real root cause. All right, then once we've got that real root cause, then we can go and say, now we can fix that root cause. And when we fix that root cause and we still provide sufficient support, you know, if it is that actually we didn't have enough training, yes, by all means, give the training. But if the issue was also the guys were under pressure, then if we fix both the training and give them more time, then we should be able to address that deficiency. And ultimately, the goal is with my remedial action, whether I'm changing my policy, changing the risk assessment, changing the form that I need to complete, whatever it is that I'm doing to improve my system, I need to actually address the deficiency. It's not just to bump up the system to add more policies to it. I need to actually address the deficiency. It should result in not having that deficiency again in the future, with all things staying equal. All right, so that is then basically, I almost want to say, the theory of how we go about monitoring. Now, next up then, I want us to actually go to SQM and see how this all works in the system. I just quickly want to check in if there are any questions. I see I've already got an improvement. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you have any improvements that you want to send through to us, please do so. I'm always curious to see where we can make this even better for you. And please know that I have a long wish list. The product team knows that whenever I do something, even in preparing for today's session, I think I sent through about 6 or 7 things of what needs to change, how we can improve this for you. All right. Just in the interest, because I'm going to be looking at the next screen next to me, I'm going to switch off my camera, but you will still hear me, hopefully loud and clearly. So I am still here, but now at least you can then focus on the product itself and you will know where I am working. Right. So in working on the product then, I just quickly want to actually... Just give me a second. Okay, there we go. So now we are seeing what I want you to see. Right, so the majority of you are probably familiar with SQM. This is, of course, our app. And when I have logged in, I went to the SQM app, clicked there, and now I'm seeing the SQM app that we've worked on. Right. If you're already using the app, you'll know that all staff, all users always land on the Operate tab or module, because that's where you'll be working. So we've got our SQM. I want to just quickly show you what I have included in our system in case you're thinking, sure, it works differently or it looks differently or whatnot. I did not include a full system, just purely because it takes me very long to set it up, and I actually reset it every now and again. So if for us, for purposes of today, having 5 or 6 policies and procedures and whatnot is more than sufficient. You will notice that I actually just published it earlier in the week. I reset the system quite often so that we work with fresh content and it looks a bit more realistic. All right, so what I have included is I've got a process whereby we consider acceptance and continuance of our clients, some considerations that need to be done, and that's there, the default library policy that we've included there, and then also information that needs to be considered in acceptance. Then I also have a risk where I identified to say that we may become aware of information that would have led us to decline the system, the client or the engagement if we had known about it beforehand. And here I only included a policy and a procedure. The library does also have a task. I didn't include it, but it is also there for us to use. All right, so that's acceptance and continuance. For relevant ethical requirements, they are mostly focused in on the fulfillment of the requirements, specifically, firstly, with regards to gifts and other inducements. So I went through the whole thing of the library with gifts and inducements. And then, of course, the task 2 that talks about completing the gifts, inducements, task or form on SQM if you are receiving any gifts or offered or being offered any gifts. And hang on. Now I have closed staff non-compliance with the ethical requirements. This really is one of my favorite ones to always demonstrate, is of course the annual declarations. All right, now let's see what I have in the system. I have the fact that a person will review that annual declarations were in fact done once a year, right? So that's on there. And you will see there I've said person with ultimate responsibility will complete the annual review the list of responses done there, and I've allocated that. Then we've also got the normal form, if I can call it that, to say all personnel, everyone in the firm must complete the actual form as the annual declaration, and you can see I've included the task there. That is the task 5 on the systems library. So that's the normal one. And then what I've also included here is to say that when we have new staff joining, this one was only added later in our imaginary year. So when at some point we realize, hang on, we only do the annual declaration once a year. And then when staff join later during the year, they don't get it. So we had to go and put an extra procedure on there, link the same task to that. But there we had said, you'll see here to say the timing, whenever someone is added, there's a Caseware cloud activity, and the cloud activity or the event is staff is added to SQM, then they are sent this form task 5. All right, so that's what's in our system. And then lastly, in terms of training requirements, we said whenever a person attends any training, they need to complete and log that in SQM. And there we've got task 1, which is the form to be completed for training. All right, so that's all we have in our system. So yes, I'm sure you will be familiar with lots of other requirements that are still required, but those are the only policies, procedures, risks, etc. that I have in the system, and that's why you'll only see I almost want to say a limited variety of procedures that we are going to monitor. Right, so that's the system of quality management. Then in terms of tasks for myself, you are nice. So this is what I'm seeing for myself. Operate is always the user's own content. So here you will see that I have 2 automatic procedures. That's the annual ethics declarations. My system, I set it to run on both the Tuesday and the Wednesday, or the Wednesday and the Thursday. So that's why there are 2 forms. It's probably not the best way to have designed it. I also completed the manual item training attendance. That one's also in there. Right, and you'll know that I can always go and complete another task if needed, but those ones are already completed by myself. Then if I go to operate overview, so this is already a part of the monitoring. If I am a operationally responsible person or an ultimately responsible person, or even a person that's involved in the monitoring, I can always come to operate overview. Hopefully they've given me access to this to come and see what is happening at a firm level. These are the nice dashboards or the insights that we like to call them, and that just gives me a high level overview. Note that this one is an operate overview, so I see it for the whole firm. If I went to insights under operate, there I also have some insights. Operate insights, that's my own insights, my own dashboard. You will see there's much less there. But under operate insights, I see the whole firm. I only have about 5 staff members in my firm, but you already see that there are 12 tasks on the system, of which only 5 tasks have been completed. So clearly there are a few tasks still in progress. Now, the first thing that we can do in monitoring the system's compliance is already to say this year is already very helpful in seeing whether firms are completing, whether the staff are completing what they need to be completing. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to show you what is in here, what you can see. And I always think about a colleague of mine who always says when he wakes up in the morning, he wants to open these dashboards and everything should be green. And tonight when he goes to bed, he wants to, again, just quickly log in and see that everything's green, and then he'll go to sleep peacefully. All right, my system is never completely green, probably because I don't complete everything, but also because I've got other users that obviously they know already, well, this is the training thing. They don't bother to go and complete things in there. And the same thing's going to happen in your firm. Your staff are not all going to be completing tasks the moment they get sent. So this is very helpful then to see, for example, at the top, how many of the tasks have been completed. Well, of course, you can see at the top as well, but also in the circle, you can see that almost 60% of the tasks have not been completed. In terms of users, all of the tasks that have been assigned to users are by active users. So there are no inactive users that still have tasks allocated to them, which obviously is going to be, senseless. And none of the users have been deleted after they were allocated these tasks. I can then, of course, also filter and say, well, I don't actually want to see all the tasks of deleted users. The trainee that left 2 years ago, I don't want to see his stuff, or the one that left at the end of March when his article's finished. Of course, he's not going to complete the stuff now. I don't want to see him. So I'll just simply untick here by the user status so that I can actually get a better indication of the current users. I can also, by source, I can see, well, of course, or my expectation would be that when users create tasks themselves, that they would actually go and complete them immediately. If I receive a gift, I create the task, I complete it, finish, done and dusted. But when the system creates tasks, I would expect there the compliance would probably be a little bit slower. So as you can see there, the forms, tasks created by the system, those are the automated tasks, the tasks that are sent to the system, to the staff for the annual declaration that got sent on the 1st of a certain month or whenever. Those are the tasks that the guys haven't completed yet. Of course, this is a problem for me, but that then also just gives me an indication that I need to actually follow up on those ones. All right. I can filter by the actual task type. If I wanted to, I can also filter by user. But what is also really helpful is on the left-hand side, I can also say, well, let me filter by user and see who are those naughty ones who have not completed any forms. And you can see poor Rinda. Rinda is a user on my system because sometimes she needs to help me on things, but she obviously got 2 tasks which she hasn't completed yet. As I said before, she ignores it. She knows it's my demo site. Joe Josephs, he hasn't signed in. That's just my imaginary user and not completed anything. New person, that's the staff member that also got automated, the task automatically sent to him when I created him on the system. So he has already completed 3 tasks. One was his new annual declaration when he joined the firm, and I think he got 2 gifts or something like that. So these are also ways in which I can filter for each of these responses. Operate tasks by versions. If I issue 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever versions, that's now not resetting, then I can also see how many of the tasks were issued by each of these versions and actually filter for that as well. On the right-hand side, we can also see current SoQM, previous one, and also when the dates were created. So if I've got lots and lots and lots, I can actually say, I know that we did our annual declaration in I don't know, let's say in August. So let me just filter for that week in August, which of the automatic tasks, and then actually get an indication of that. So say created by the system and maybe do them from the 1st of August to the last day of August. And then I'll clearly get the indication to say, okay, most of them are done, none of them are done, some of them are done, etc. The other thing I can also do, it's also still monitoring, is to actually get the detailed information of tasks. Now here, let me just select the training attendance so that you can see a simple-ish way. So here I can see new person submitted something and I submitted something myself. Now also remember that you always have this column chooser. So you can say, well, I want to actually see the course name. So let's include the course name and the type of skills trained. I'm maybe not too worried about the date modified because the person would have just created it. Yeah, things like that. And so I'll now see that. So what's the course name? What's the type of skills trained? This is the person that completed it, and I'm happy. Or maybe I want to see something else. I don't know, anything else that you want to complete, and you can actually ask for that. The person that assigns the name and the person that attended, that's the same person. So you probably don't even need those at this point in time. But you can easily have a look at that. If we get to things like, I'm just going to maybe add the annual declarations now, that task is now much longer. You can see there's a lot. Also, this specific task has a lot of fields. You're going to see here, there's a lot of fields. If you've ever opened the library for ethics declarations, you'll know there's a lot of fields. So if I don't want to see it online, I can always export this information and then actually go and monitor it there, especially with things like, I don't know, are you a trustee or any of those kind of questions? I might want to actually filter it and follow up from there. So you can also look at the detailed responses. Now, what is important to note here is that even if I'm looking at this 20 times a day, the system does not log that Joanna looked at the insights this morning and she filtered this and she filtered that, and she actually finally got to the point of seeing only 2 of the 7 people completed the annual ethics declaration. What we need is we need to actually have a work program in the monitoring tab to go and show that these things were done. So if you want to have evidence of this, let's call it ongoing monitoring, to say, once a week, this person logs in and checks X or Y or Z, whatever it is that you want to check. You need to actually have record of that on the monitoring tab in the monitoring module. All right, so having dealt with the operate overview, then we are ready for the monitoring that's going to happen. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we have quite a number of page menu items here. First of all, we have understanding. Now, understanding, we're going to document the understanding that we have of the firm. I'll talk you through that just now. We're then going to design the monitoring activities. I always like to think of that as a shopping list, basically saying these are all the things, but we'll come back to that. Then we're going to have the work programs. That's where we're going to do the actual ticking and bashing, if you want. We'll have record of the findings that were raised, and we will have records of the remedial actions. And then lastly, the results of all of these will be available in reports for us to work with. Right. So in understanding, as you will see, this section, yes, it's also understanding, but it is not the same understanding as we had in design. In design, we had to understand the firm and the types of engagements and the clients we have so that we could identify risks and design the responses for the firm. In understanding for monitor, the person or persons performing monitoring firstly has to also understand the firm. So that's why you will see here we say, update your knowledge of the nature and circumstances of the firm. And so here you don't have to document everything from the understanding in design. What you will probably do is you'll probably go to design, go and see what they documented there. Maybe include an annotation. If I just remove my sign off quickly, I can show you how to also just include an annotation. Apologies. And I can document as much as I want to. I can include here, but I don't need to write a whole book here necessarily. So I've just started to document. I reviewed the understanding of the entity. I noticed there were some changes. I made inquiries of this, that, blah, blah, blah. A few small things that you can document. Okay, you don't have to update or redo the whole understanding of the firm. This is especially helpful if you have a new, or let's rather say an external service provider who performs the monitoring. You don't want that person to go and document in design. They must see in design, read, and then come back here. Remember, always you have the annotation option. So that is really to let you link any documentation. So you can have documentation in your SharePoint or on your firm's actual server, or maybe even in your client folder for SQM, and then just link that URL here with the description of what it is that you have linked, and then save that. And then let's say that is maybe a worksheet where you documented something, or maybe minutes of a meeting you had, anything like that, and that will then be a hyperlink added to this item. Okay, I'm going to just sign off. We've updated our understanding of the firm. Next up, we need to then understand how the firm went about designing their system. So there's a bunch of questions here. Nothing's going to force you to have to complete everything, to sign off everything, none of that. I have indicated a few examples and started to document some of the items, but this is really ultimately to help you to see what is it that we need to focus on this round of monitoring. All right, so you can come and update this as and when required. It really is to help you to identify or understand how the firm went about designing the system of quality management. Then an extremely helpful list or report is this report of not monitored. Now, it looks quite hectic because if I go into this, it has a lot of content. Just have a look there. It's lots and lots and lots and lots. What you will notice, though, is that it is all the objectives and then a lot of policies and procedures and things like that that are coming through. So what is this? This is basically all content that were designed in the system's design phase. And then the mandatory objectives, because we have to make sure that those objectives have been addressed. And then the policies and procedures in the firm system of quality management. So what we are basically doing in this document for you is we're helping you to see that if there is basically any content on this report of not yet monitored, it means that you haven't completed all your monitoring activities that needed to be developed yet. There are still items in your system of quality management, policies and procedures that you don't have a monitoring activity for. So it's possible that you're going to miss monitoring that item. Good. So that's really all this report is. And what you will see, let's actually quickly go and just have a look. We're going to actually develop the monitoring activity for training attendance just now. So if you see, if I filter here, personnel training requirements, which is my procedure 175, and task 1, which is my task training attendance. Those two are still reflected there. If I go and even look for competence, we'll probably even have there we go, the objective, the risk, and the policy. All of those 5 items I'm going to address through developing one monitoring activity. Okay, it's in the library, so we don't even have to think it up ourselves or anything. But those 5 items I've shown you now, they are in this report of not monitored. Once we've now added this item to the monitoring activities, it is not going to be reflected in this list anymore. And so ultimately, once I've developed all the monitoring activities, this report should hopefully be blank. Okay, that's what we would aim for as we are completing recording monitoring activities. All right. So when I am in monitoring activities or understanding or any of these areas, my add new item button would be monitoring activity or work program. So what we're going to add now will be a monitoring activity. But before we do that, I want to just show you what I have already done. So you might or might not remember the detail of the items that we have already recorded. We already show you all the mandatory monitoring items. What do I mean by that? The standard does not include mandatory items to monitor, but we have included the monitoring activities in the library that will monitor the mandatory responses. So you'll know the paragraph, I think it's paragraph 34 of the standard says the firm must always do annual declarations. The firm must always have the following for complaints and complaints from staff and all those things. So they're all so-called mandatory monitoring items. So they're there just to help you to remember. But I will basically, best practice is to import each of these items from the Add New Item button. So once they are signed off, they are reflected in the status as done. You would have noticed this really useful column being added a few months ago. So I'm going to sort, and you'll see that I've already got quite a few monitoring activities in here, and they are all signed off. Some of them are indicated as firm level and so forth. Right, then there are lots of them that are also not signed off. So we're going to go and do the monitoring activity, design the monitoring activity for the training requirements. So I'll go add new monitoring activity. I'm going to go to the monitoring library, which is there and really, really helpful. I want to actually just remind you of this Excel report. You can literally export the full library to Excel. I use this a lot. I'm going to actually show it to you. I use it a lot because it just helps you to, maybe if you are looking, you knew you were wanting to see something for, oh, no, I'm not showing this to you. Let me quickly share. Just give me a second. Sorry, I'm going to be there just now. Okay, now you can see it. All right, so here's my Excel sheet. It's literally an export from SQM. So you can see there's lots and lots and lots of content. Sometimes you'll see these funnies with a P and the whatnots. That's just the way it gets exported from the program. But what is really helpful is if I want to go and see which are the linked monitoring activities for a certain risk or for a certain policy or anything like that, I can actually go and just literally Control F and find them in here. So it's extremely helpful for me to find what is available in the library. All right, because I can also go and look for things here, but sometimes I might want to sort them or see what's there, things like that. So what we want to do today is we want to go and look for the one about the training. Oh my word, my typing is a bit slow today. So we want to go and see what is the monitoring items for training. So now what we have here is I've already got the monitoring one for leadership. Here we cannot actually change the filtering or the, I've got various items here, IT applications, things like that. So there's a variety of monitoring items. Now maybe I think, oh, you know what, the nature is clearly a bit tricky for me to do. So let's go and have a look then at the title. So now I'm going to go filter for training and title. And on the right-hand side, I can see it's already a lot better. I'm going to find it much easier. Here is monitoring 193 that says personnel training requirements. And this is the one that's linked to our what is the word, objective. And then also, if you remember task 1, that's where we said we're going to, that's the task form for attending training, etc. So this is the monitoring activity we want to actually import now. So select that monitoring activity and it brings it in the monitoring number, etc. It's of course relevant. The area is indicated as implementation and operation of policies and procedures. Now, interestingly enough, just have a look at this. Nothing's going to actually change depending on what I select here, but it just also helps you to think about what am I trying to test when I am selecting this item. You can either test that the evaluation was done correctly, the monitoring and remediation process was done correctly, the risk assessment process, or just that we are complying with applicable standards if you want. And then, of course, that the responsibilities have been allocated. But almost all of them, actually all of them will actually also link to implementation, operation of policies and procedures, because every monitoring activity is linked to a policy and a procedure. So you don't have to be worried about it as such, but it just helps you to think about what am I actually doing? What am I trying to test? The sub area is to say, am I going to test this personnel training requirement? So the fact that we want to check that staff have in fact recorded training that they attended in the firm's training register. Are we testing, or is this applied at firm level or at engagement level? In other words, would I want to test it at firm level or engagement level? Chances are this is probably going to be tested at firm level. Not in the engagement file. You don't expect to select an engagement file and then see, oh, I see UNA's training records for having attended the IFRS training. You don't expect that. It's going to be at firm level. Some of these are actually at both the firm and the engagement level, and then I can actually tick them. And what's helpful here is you'll have one monitoring activity in your shopping bag, but you can actually apply it or pick that item when you are developing a work program for either the monitoring at firm level or the monitoring at engagement level. So that possibility is there. All right, I'm going to pick firm level. Then the component, that's the 6 components the standard has, and this being HR, we want to see that the staff have all done what they needed to. We will then actually go and select resources. All right. So that is then the component. And the reason for that is really just if we want to see whether there are any findings or activities performed or anything for that component, we can then link it up with that. That's really the only reason. This is the nature then. I can modify it as much as I need or want to for my firm. When will I do this? Maybe I'll do this manually. If I want to do it every few months or something at a specific date, I can, of course, do scheduling. You would have seen scheduling already. But I'll go and select the frequency. I'll say once a year, the 4th week of October. That's when I'm going to do the monitoring on the training attended. All right. You can also do it quarterly, etc., as you wish. The extent is to say, what are you going to test? All audit staff, or you're going to test, I'm typing a little bit fast, it's taking a bit of a while for it to appear, all audit staff. I'm going to select all the engagement files of public interest entities, or I'm going to make a selection of the entries in the gift register, or whatever it is that you want to, the extent, how far are you going to go with the testing. As with the other engagements or other items in the dialogues, if you only have one applicable standard, you don't have to select one, but you can select it if you want to. I don't have any specific references there. I don't have links. If you want to have links, you can. If you want to make additional notes. And then we're going to come and link the items. Now, this here is also where your Excel is quite helpful. Or if you want to actually just go right click and duplicate your browser and to be able to actually see what the other items are. But I've made a note of these ones beforehand, so I'm going to tell you this is MOHR and this is 2. Let me just make 2, and I will go and select that objective. The linked policy, that is policy 34. And I'll select that one. The linked procedure, we said was 175 from what we saw earlier on when we looked at the items not yet addressed. The risks, it was risk 67 that was recorded, policy personnel competence, and the task was, of course, task 1, if you remember correctly. My goodness. And then effective from, well, that monitoring activity will be effective immediately. So that's all good to go. And we can save this monitoring activity. If I now go and I haven't signed it off, remember? So if I go and look for the status, ready to sign off, monitoring 193, and this is the item, and I can sign it off. It's now going to disappear basically, because remember now I changed from ready to sign off to done. So monitoring 193, resources, personnel requirements, and there we go. So I'll go through that for each of the monitoring activities. So how will I know once I've got all the monitoring activities? Basically, you will go to your understanding, you'll go to your report of not monitored, and you won't have any remaining items on this report. Let's go and see, do we still have anything for the training? Remember, we had training as a header. There's nothing there because we have included both the task and there was another one that was also in there for training. And then also in terms of competence, we had the policy, the risk, the procedure. All of them have also moved basically out of the report of not monitored to the monitoring activities. Right, so that's one. You'll almost look at that as your shopping list. These are all my monitoring activities that are available for me to go and include in my work program. The next step then is to go to work programs. I could also go just from the add new item to then go and include my work programs. So I've already provided a few examples here for us. So types of work programs that I would probably expect. If you do quarterly monitoring, you'll go and create a monitoring procedure for quarter 1, quarter 2, whatever it is, and you'll give it a name to clearly identify it later on. You can see that I've already completed some items here. That's why it says in progress. The top one, I haven't done anything, and the bottom one, I've completed completely. But let's not worry about that. The annual declarations, I will monitor once a year to say, have all staff done it? But then I also need to check that the new guys that started during the year, that they also did it. All right, so maybe I'm going to include that as part of my quarterly monitoring. Maybe. Otherwise, maybe I'm just going to check it once a year. Then I might also have engagement inspections. So those file reviews that we're going to have, and I'll have engagement inspection for each of them. I'll include a name or a partner or something to make it obvious what this is for, what this is about. And then I had my annual firm level monitoring in case I didn't do quarterly monitoring, or if I have on top of the quarterly few things, I also have one large chunk of monitoring that gets done once a year. All right, so that's what I expect to kind of see. You can have as many or as varied as you want in need in your requirements. Mine were all done today because I created all of them this morning for us, but of course that will happen as you need to. So how do we create these? So I'm going to create a work program for us. And I'm going to say this is the September 2025 monitoring of trading records, just to make it simple. Okay. What do I include here? Well, I can search for nature. I can look for specific areas. So, for example, implementation and operation of policies and procedures. Go and look for those ones. If I just want to look at the items for monitoring, I can do that. So I can search according to those ones. Let me just select all of them for now. And then I will go and tick the ones that I want to include in the work program. Well, of course, if you want to include everything, by all means, but that's probably going to take quite long. How will I go looking at these things? I also will go and look at the sub area. Remember, we said we can select either or both, firm and engagement level. In the case, these are all mostly then reflected for implementation and operation of policies and procedures. In the case of having selected any others, like the monitoring and remediation, that's basically firm level by default, so currently not reflecting that. The implementation of policies here for monitoring, for new information to decline, we identified that as at engagement level only. You'll probably have something at firm level as well. And so that's how we then had all of those allocated. Okay, so you could really filter for these. Timing, if I have stuff scheduled, like for example, the monitoring of training requirements here, we said on the 4th Monday every October, we said we're going to review that, then that will be the 4th Monday. That will be how we're going to select and identify what needs to be done this month. But for now, we're going to manually select this training. We said we're going to monitor training, so I'm going to select that same training one, not because it's October, but because that's the one I want to just show you now, or I do it every month, and then my frequency would have said monthly or manually. Okay, go through the others, see if there's anything else I want to include, and save that work program. This is now the work program that I've then created. You can see the one right at the bottom is added. So if I then go into edit, that's then when I'm given all the procedures. In our case, we only have one. I'm going to show you a different one just now. Each of the procedures that need to be completed, I need to conclude on each of them to say either there's no exceptions, everything was done the way it should have been done. Fantastic. That's of course what we are hoping for. We will go, or I can go and select exceptions. That means there is a finding that needs to be raised, or I haven't done this and I'm not going to. I personally would then expect a reason to be added as an annotation or somewhere to say, why did we create this in the first place if we then later on decided not to do it? Having said that, it is possible that you might have by accident included this. Okay. It is entirely possible to delete this work program if you need to. So I'm going to delete it now because we only have that one item in there. But know that if you delete it, you are deleting it. Right. So it's gone. Says, are you sure you want to delete it? And because it's the training one that I just created, I'm going to say yes, and it gets deleted. But I have asked that we should not be able to delete items that have already been completed. I mean, I don't want this monitoring of the declarations that has been completed Everything's been done. I don't want to delete that. So you will very soon not be able to delete that anymore. And also, of course, if they're in progress. But if you made a mistake and you cleared procedures that you shouldn't have, or you didn't include things you wanted to, of course, then you can just go and basically redo it again. Okay. What we have done, you'll see here that I have for the engagement, I have looked at the gift register and I found an exception. For another one, I didn't have any exceptions. That was good. What happened with the exception? So let's say we're going to go through just an example here to just raise and go through the motions of this. The example is probably a little bit silly now to say no new information to the client. So let's just say there's another matter that wasn't recorded in the gift register. So I'm going to say exceptions, the same way we would have done there. If I click exception, nothing happens. I need to actually go and raise a finding. I could link it to a list of findings that are already recorded, right? But in this case, we're not going to record or link it to a finding that's already recorded for this work program. Okay, I've recorded other findings as well. That's not reflected here. I will then have a title to say engagement partner received a gift exceeds the value allowed. Okay, so our policy says you may be given a gift up to a certain amount, maybe, or something like that. And this engagement partner got a very big gift. He did include it in the gift register, but it was not appropriate. Okay, I'm going to call this one find 3 or something like that. You can, numbers are always a good one. But yeah, I'm sure you'll have a system of numbering them already. So the finding is then going to say engagement partner. Actually, just going to just copy this. We'll actually document it in a bit more detail to say he was given an overseas trip by the CEO and whatever the case is. And this is considered to be influencing, oh my word, where's my spelling, influencing inappropriately. Okay. There you go. And then I say, right, who's the engagement partner? Now, for our purposes today, I'm going to jump between all my different hats. Okay. So my hat is to say, I'm going to assign it to the engagement partner. This person is the engagement partner. And I'm going to assign it to her to say, why did this happen? Why did this happen? So I'm going to send it to a response to say, engagement partner, you received a gift. You know you shouldn't have received it. Yes, writing it in the gift register, great, but that should not have been done. So what now? I've sent it to that person. I can't actually do anything else at this point in time because I'm waiting for that person's response. So I'm just going to save this and wait for that person to respond. All right. There's my findings been raised, and I can now actually just close that. So you'll see the work program now says completed, but we're not done with our work yet, because when I go to findings, now I see there we have finding 3, engagement partner received the gift, etc. Okay. I see there's a question, so I'm going to just interrupt myself at this point. We've sent off the finding to the person, the engagement partner has to complete. They're going to complete their question just now. And while we wait for them to do that, we're quickly going to see what this person is asking. So I see, is all these objectives, risks, procedures, policies, and tasks available in the library, or will the firm prepare them yourselves? Okay, I see that's the one question. Okay. So, yes, we have prepared libraries for, if we just look at the design, the libraries are there for risks, policies. So yeah, you can see you can go and record a risk, a policy, a procedure, and a task. And then when we are in monitor, you have a library of monitoring activities. That does not mean that you cannot create extra ones. You can always create an extra one. So if I go here, I don't have to start in a library. I can type my own things completely. What makes SQM really valuable is that we have already prepared, having worked through the requirements in the standard and the first time implementation guide, SQM 2, and a variety of other matters. We've already worked through the application material, the requirements, and added in there risks, policies, procedures, monitoring. There was everything to literally fit to all of those requirements. So practically speaking, you're probably going to import the majority of those items as content and then use them, adjust them as necessary for your firm. You can always add additional items. Well, I would possibly not expect you to add additional items would probably be the objectives, because those are all the ones from the standards, but you can actually add to those objectives. You can actually modify to them, etc. But yeah, you have a lot of content already in the product that you can already use and just edit as you need. All right, so that addresses that question. I think those were all the questions that I needed to address, so that's all good. Now, what's happened in the meantime while we were answering those questions is the engagement partner came to his operate. Oh, firstly, I need to show you this. So the engagement partner actually received a notification, the one on the left-hand side. He received the notification on the left-hand side that says, "Hi, partner, an activity has been emailed to you. From the monitoring of the firm's SoQM, a finding was raised. Please go and address it." So he or she clicks on that and then gets to a finding. So that will open up my tasks. And in my findings page menu item of my system of quality management as an individual, I will see there, this was raised, it's in progress, engagement partner received the gift that exceeds the value, blah, 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 blah. And guess what a pen means? A pen means I need to now answer, right? Just before we do that, note that the second one has a little I, that view. So the engagement partner, or this individual, already received 2 previous findings. For the first one, he's already responded to the first response. And as we go through the process, you'll see he's also responded to the remedial action. Okay, so that's already completed. The other 2 still needs the first rounds of responses. So look at these 2 findings we have. The first one is the partner received this massive gift. And the second one is to say that the client offered 3 team members a week's stay at the lodge, but only 1 team member completed the declaration. So we sent that finding to 2 persons to say, why did you not complete the declaration? So let's, rather than going with a partner and try and imagine why he thought that was okay, let's rather go with the team members and say, so why did you not complete it? So when I click on that thing, this is what pops up. This is what I'll see. Oh, sorry. Now I've clicked on the slide instead of the system. I see, are the email alerts automatic? Yes, they are set up. When you set up your user, you include an email and they will automatically get this email in there. I noticed that for my firm, there are no email notifications that are going out when I set responsibilities at the design stage. So no, they only go out when you when tasks are automatically sent and when you raise these queries. So if your email notifications are not going out, please contact the support so that they can just investigate that with you in detail, because these should go out automatically. Right. So there's the finding raised by the monitoring person, finding number, and there's the query that the person raised. And I am now told, team member, you did not go and complete the gift register. Oh my word, I did not even know that I had to complete the gift register. The gift. Woo. I don't know, there is such a thing. I don't know. You know, you're just playing dumb. Or maybe you thought the other person was going to complete it on everyone's behalf, for whatever the reason is. You respond to the finding, I honestly didn't know that there was a gift register, that I had to complete it. Okay, good. You might say, how did you not know that? But that's the second question. So when I've done that, it's also assigned to Joe Josephs. He's going to go complete it and say, what's his reason? Okay, we don't know what's his reason, but now I've done it. It just takes a moment, but the workflow stage will go from in progress, the orange, to green. My response is captured and the workflow stage should now any moment update to green. Good. Note that once I've completed this, I cannot edit this. It basically gets frozen in time. All right, so you've got to do it and do it right the first time. So that was the response. Now what we will see is that my response to, oh, there we go, to the gift that I just completed, nothing else has been completed here, but I have at least submitted my response. That was what happened while we addressed the queries. Now I become a monitor again. I put on my monitoring person's hat. The only reason why I do it like this, all in the same user, is so that I don't have to sign in, sign out, sign in, sign out, to be able to show you both sides of the coin. All right. Obviously, it's going to happen on two different users' computers, and two different users are going to do this. So please don't think all of this happens in one browser instantaneously like it does now. I'm sure you would know findings don't appear like that as quickly as today. Right. So then I get I've never received a notification to say someone has responded to your finding. Okay. So I don't think you're necessarily going to get those. But what we now see is that we see this person has responded. There's the finding, and I can now go and complete this to say, oh, I see that someone has responded and said they didn't know there was a gift register. I can then maybe say, but how's this possible? Maybe this doesn't make sense. And because that person cannot go back and change it or anything like that, I now have the opportunity to basically walk to that person or engage Cloud Collaborate or some other way to communicate with them and clarify my question. And then I might say something like, this person started on this job and only read the system of quality management or blah, 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 3 months down the line or so forth. Okay, then I would have expected this person to say, at the time of the audit, I didn't realize that I had to go and complete the gift register. Well, then the question is, why did you not do it since? Right, so of course, there's a variety of scenarios. The question then is this a deficiency? If you think about it and you consider and you investigate and you realize, actually, this is probably not a deficiency because this person only got this one gift given once and has now been educated, blah, 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 not a deficiency. But the question is still, how did a person get onto an engagement and not know what the basic policies and procedures of a firm is? So I would say, yes, this is a deficiency in the firm system of quality management, because how can a person not know what the basic ethical requirements are before going on an engagement? We've said they must get the SQM notification. We said they must do the annual declaration. Well, guess what? Part of that declaration, if I'm not mistaken, says I'll comply with the ethical requirements. So I guess next step is to say, how do we know that they are aware of everything that's in the requirements? So, then we need to go and unpack that. So assessment, we said they need to consider the severity of this deficiency on the system of quality management. Maybe the severity is low, but pervasively, they've obviously not read the manual. So I'd say pervasively is maybe a bit higher. And then you need to come and decide what is the impact. This impact's not going to do anything other than just saying how big does the remediation need to be. Okay, so let's go for medium for now. You do need to then assign this to a person again. So again, I'm going to assign it myself so that you can see this. Oh man, you need to click OK. I always forget about the OK part. And send for remedial action. So now I'm sending it to that person to say, tell me why. Why did you not know? What was the root cause? Now, please note, it does not mean it has to go to the same person. If the staff member is a junior staff member and they can't do the root cause analysis by themselves, I might send it to the audit manager, I might send it to the quality manager, I might send it to HR. So you decide who needs to do the remediation here. And then that's who you assign it to in this case. Right. Once I've done the remediation, I can now sign off this finding because there's nothing more to do in the finding itself. The remediation needs to happen. That can happen afterwards. So I'm going to sign it off, and that should then put my signature there. Just trying to see. I think it's just a timing issue. It's going to... No, it has only saved my finding, but you can see it is a deficiency, and then I can, oh, it doesn't want to sign it off as prepared. It does say mark as prepared. This morning I also struggled with getting it signed off there, so I don't know if there is a little bit of a delay there and I'm just in too much of a hurry. Right, so we've gone through creating the monitoring activities. We then created the work programs, we raised the findings. Now you'll see that that issue that now became a remedial action, or sorry, that became a deficiency. No, it's not a remedial action yet. That finding, sorry, finding is a deficiency, and we now need remedial action for it. So what's going to happen now is, again, that user, the HR manager, someone like that, is going to get another response from our emails, from our notifications, the one on the right-hand side. From monitoring the firm's SQM, a finding was identified as a deficiency. Please go and click on this to go and give details and remedial actions. So you can clearly see the first one was the finding, now it's a deficiency, go and action on it. Okay. Then when I go to my findings, now I can see that I need to actually also give remedial action. So in terms of remedial action, what I didn't say to you earlier on is in terms of findings also, you can actually link findings to other items, and the same way also with our remedial action. So if I've already said, send my staff on training or create an e-learning on the firm's policies or procedures, or whatever it is that you can do, there's training or something that can address more than one of them, you can always go and link them here already. Okay. So let's say, for example, we've already got the new policy where staff are going to complete the declaration on joining. If that also said, and the declaration will include them having read through the quality policies and procedures or whatever the case is, I can also link that there. Okay. Back finding, same process we've seen before. The response is what I did earlier on, only now I know it is a deficiency. So now I need to add remedial actions. We've already linked the previous one, and I can add another one to say on joining staff to declare that they read the policies and procedures. Whatever the case may be, hopefully you think of something that is less, was what I say, traumatic. Okay. And without trying to save some time, without taking too much time, sorry, that's going to be the remediation, the remedial action. What is the root cause? Well, the person never read the quality system and wasn't aware. Why not? And then basically to say policies and procedures didn't pick it up. Why not? Well, whatever. Why not? We go across all the way until we find the root cause, and that root cause is going to change. So what will it be? So we are going to say add a new policy and procedure to require on joining staff need to declare this will be completed on a task in SQM. So we know they're going to be sent a task to say you've got to complete this after reading the firm system of quality management to declare that you are aware of what that needs to be done. That's my remediation action. So that's that one. And you can see now I've got one that I actually linked to another remediation action. I've got another one that I added in here. What I picked up this morning is that my little submit button is hiding away behind this table. So I've already raised that as a little fix that they need to just bring in for us. Once I'm happy that I've included all the remedial actions, just remember when you commit to this, you're going to do them. So be careful of adding too many. But those are all the remediation actions. I will submit them, and those will all go into my plan for fixing these items. Okay. Right, I'm just waiting for this to update. Response captured. Now it should say green. There we go, submitted. So I can clear or close this browser. It has made the remedial action also an eye for view. And then the monitoring person will go back again. And when that monitoring person goes to the remedial actions, that person will see the old one that we had, as well as on joining to declare, blah, blah, blah. There's my new modified remedial action. All right. The only thing remaining for us, I see we are basically out of time, but the only thing remaining for us is the reports. So here, the monitoring persons can actually generate a variety of reports. What is basically included here is all the monitoring activities that has been performed, right? So each of them, each of those activities. So what we had looked at this morning was actually the inducements and gifts. Let me just close some of the other ones so that we can see all the relevant information. So what's been included is each of the work programs, each of the monitoring activities, and then when there are findings, they are there. So even if you don't have a finding, you can still see that those procedures have been done and there was no issue. And then when there are findings, whether there are deficiencies, you can possibly even move this here if you rather want to see no, and that then explains it. The severity, all of that, and the remedial action. So you can see all of that on one report. Yes, you can click on the hyperlinks if you need to. There are additional columns you can actually add to your column chooser if you want to, and you can export either all the information to PDF if you need to report to partners, things like that. But why PDF? Because in PDF you can, of course, then also hide the information that you don't want the client to send. So if you have to report to your audit committee, you can click to only then basically, let's say, export only the findings and only for the, well, this looks a little bit silly now, but remember we were in the work program for engagement inspection, okay? So only the activities performed on that engagement inspection, only the ones where the findings were raised, and I can then go and export the selected rows to PDF so that I can then report those to the audit committee. So that is also possible. I do have the option to also see reports sorted by objective, risk, etc. So that if I have, let's say, for example, I know now that I need to update or change my policies and procedures because we didn't have the right gift register procedures. There you can see how you have a lot of ethical requirements, lots of remedial action. There's a new policy, so then I can actually export this and see, right, the person that needs to do the design, update the design of the system, that person can go and actually go to the design module and add the new policies as we said we would. All right, so that's the reports. It's really just functionality, but the work happens before that. Right, so that brings us then to the end of today's webinar. I see most of the questions have been answered. We will send you a link afterwards with the recording, all of that. So thank you so much for your attendance today. I'm going to hang around still if there are any more questions, anything that you want to know that I can help with. Otherwise, again, if there is anything that you want us to maybe see if we can improve them, the system, then that's also definitely, please, the invite is still there to let me know that. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Thank you for your participation and have a lovely rest of the Friday. Goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, I see one or two questions coming in, and while we are busy with that, I actually just quickly want to show you on the success community, that is the Caseware Africa success community. Let me show you the site. So there you go, successcommunity.africa, casewareafrica.com. There is a page, so if you literally land on the success community, This is what it looks like when you're on the landing page. You can go to getting started, and then under getting started, there you go to assurance templates. And then under assurance templates, there is an SQM. There you have right second from the bottom is your SQM page. And then we've got a lot of resources to help you to set up your system. So there are, in the introduction, there's a quick navigation walk through, a little video, but there's also under the features and additional resources, there are 2 quite extensive webinars that we ran last year, Get Ahead session 1, session 2. Each of them are 2 hours long and helps you to take you through each of the bits. So I've got a question, for example, about someone that needs guidance on how to set up the tasks or anything like that. So the tasks will be under the first one, because session 1 was about designing your system up to the point of being able to publish. Session 2 was then about how to use the operate overview, monitor, and evaluation. So I would recommend that you go and have a look at session 1 and see what's included in there about how to set up the tasks and all of those things. We have also got some pointers or some little other guidances under each of the modules. So there's design, there's operate overview, and so forth. Under design, there's a lot of guidance. So each of these items has a little video, and then with that, also a guidance document. So the how-to page, if you want. So design responsibilities, setup, understanding, objectives, risks. And then we also take you through to the tasks, and then review and publish. So that can also be very helpful. What I've seen what some users do is they literally go and they say, okay, I'm going to start monitor understanding. How do I do this? Okay, I've got to go to monitor, and I'll go to monitor understanding, watch the video maybe, or look at the page, and then complete the items as they go along. Right, so that is very, very helpful. I know that not all of the page menu items are included in here, but that already will bring you quite far in helping you to set up your firm's system. Someone has said you do not have the right permissions to complete your tasks. Contact your cloud administrator. What does this mean, and how can it be resolved? Okay, I'm not sure where this came from, but what I can maybe just suggest that you have a look at, that's part of your setup on your SQM cloud, is if I set up my SQM staff. So this is something that I've also seen with someone else. So I'm going to go on what I saw there and how we resolved it. So if I look at myself here as a member, I have to be assigned to an entity. So, okay, I'm a system-wide role, so that's not going to work for me now. I think Joe might also be system-wide. No, so Joe is not an administrator. You'll see he only has some access on cloud itself. Okay, so whoever runs the cloud and sets up the staff and all of those ones needs to make sure that you have allocated the person to at least one entity, and the default entity is basically the entity that corresponds to your browser. So if you are in your Caseware Cloud, you'll have your firm name there, where mine currently says Caseware Africa Content Provider. So that is likely to be your first entity that will be created by default. So if I go to cloud entities, you can see I've only got one entity. That is I think they call it entity 1 or something. It's like your primary entity. And all users, to be able to complete tasks, have to have editor access to this entity. So if I just have a look at it, I think, I'm not sure if this is going to help us now. So you can see there that all the tasks that I've created were written to this system. So I need to be able to give all the staff access to this entity, and I'll go from that little person, and then all of them need to have editor access in the entity. So this is the entity itself. So the roles you might have an administrator or an owner of the entity or anything like that, but they can't just view this entity. They can't just have access. They need to be able to edit here. So what I found, some other firms, and you'll see here the partners, but the partners have viewer permission, but because they are also administrators, they don't seem to have a problem. Okay. So technically that should also be editor. And so forth, but you can see Joe has editor access, new person has editor access. Rinda is an administrator on the cloud, so that's why she doesn't need editor access for this entity. She can do whatever she wants on the whole thing. So there I need to give for this, let's call it entity number 1, your primary entity, I need to give all staff editor access to this entity for them to be able to complete tasks, etc. Otherwise, they're just going to see the system of quality management, and they'll get an error, probably not so much under SoQM, but under tasks, they'll get an error somewhere around here that says that you do not have the right permissions to complete your tasks. And also when you click there, you won't be able to create a task. I think it's blocked out, or it's grayed out, or you can't even see it at all, or you can't even click on the task or something like that. Okay, Janet, I hope that answers your question. I hope that helps you. Yeah. So I see Janet says she doesn't see, she sees operate. In other words, I can see on my SoQM dashboard, it's just SoQM responsibilities and so forth. I don't see monitor. What that means is that you have only been allocated the access to operate, just the bare minimum access on SQM. So the users that need to be able to work on SQM in the design or in the monitoring, so those will only be certain staff members in the firm. There, if I go to, let's say, to the groups, because I've allocated my access per group, so the engagement partners, for example, they have access. When I look at their roles on the apps on SQM, there you go. Oh my word. So the default access that you're given on SQM is create. So if everything's off, you can't access anything. You won't even see SQM. When you go there to the left, you won't even see it. Okay. You can obviously see it. So I've given you access, or the engagement partner or the cloud administrator has given you access, but only create, which means you will only see the normal staff member access create. If you have to be doing the monitoring, I will activate the monitoring tab for you. And because you need to see monitoring, I'll probably also be giving you design and operate overview. You don't necessarily need evaluate. If you will just be involved in designing of the firm, I won't give you monitor, I might give you design and operate overview. So you give access to each of the individuals based on the modules that they need access to in order to perform their roles. Right. Okay, I think those are all the questions. I'll give another minute or two if there are any additional questions, but we've had some really good questions. Thank you very much for that. The session is being recorded, yes, and we will make it available. Maybe not immediately, but let's say towards the end of next week, you'll probably see it on the YouTube channel. You might also get a link to the recording in the post-webinar email, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But the recording will be made available. I also see a question, is assigning of the user roles covered in the tutorials on the website? The user roles being the design responsibilities, that is definitely covered there, yes. The cloud setup, I'm not 100% sure because that's part of the default cloud. So we can go and have a look at that. If we go getting started and we look at cloud and add-on apps. Okay, so we cloud onboarding, onboarding tutorials. So there we have creating an entity, adding staff, assigning roles. I think that is it. Yeah, so I think that should help you to see what's necessary. These are all videos, so I don't want to play them now and then create issues with the sound. There are also, that's app release information and knowledge base, which might be some articles and things. But the bare minimum, at least, is in adding staff and assigning roles. That should help you. Also, just make sure that we always prefer, from a practical perspective for SQM, we prefer to rather not necessarily give too much access through staff, but I'll rather assign a staff member. So if I take myself, for example, you'll see I'm assigned as a partner, in a group of partners. So always try and assign the person to groups rather than trying to give them roles in the apps individually. So how you will see that, mine, remember the previous one was blue, where I tick, 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 tick in the group. But this means I can't unassign myself access here. I have been given, you can see there also, if I hover above it, I've inherited those access rights through the partners group. Because then if I'm no longer a partner, you don't have to remember to take away my stuff. You just unassign me from the partners group. Or if I get promoted from second year trainee to senior, you just assign me from the one role to the other role, or groups, and I automatically inherit all the roles and all the access rights that goes with being a audit senior or a manager or a partner, whatever it is. All right, so that's also very helpful to look at assigning the staff to groups and then managing the roles through the groups. And so I thank you for your participation. Thank you for all these fantastic questions. It really gives me a lot of insight of what we also can give you, or where to point you to some extra resources. And yeah, I think with that, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for your time. I know one's time is very valuable. So thank you for that, and have a fantastic rest of the Friday. Thank you. Goodbye.